I still remember the first time I saw her. It's strange how a single moment can split your life into before and after. Before her, everything felt ordinary. Simple, predictable, safe. After her, nothing was ever the same again. Her name was Clara. At least that's what she told me. The funny thing is, even now, after everything that happened, a part of me still remembers the way she smiled that first night. The way her laugh echoed through the cafe, soft but confident, like she belonged in every room she walked into. She had this way of looking at you, like you were the only person that mattered. And in that moment, I believed it. I shouldn't have. It was raining that night. Not the kind of rain that ruins your plans, but the kind that slows time down. I'd just left the office late, exhausted, looking for a quiet place to sit. That's when I saw her, sitting by the window, a cup of coffee untouched, staring out like she was lost in another world. Something about her felt familiar, though I couldn't place it. I don't usually approach strangers. I've always been the quiet type, the observer. But that night, something pulled me toward her. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was a mistake. Mind if I sit here? I'd asked. She looked up slowly, her eyes soft but curious. You can, she said, but only if you don't talk about the weather. I laughed. Nervous. Surprised. That was the start of it. We talked for hours that night. About music, life, regrets, and dreams. She said she worked in marketing. Freelance, mostly online. I told her about my job in IT, my long hours, my boring life. She teased me for calling it boring. Maybe you just need a little chaos, she said with a grin. Little did I know, she was the chaos. When we said goodbye, she scribbled her number on a napkin. Don't overthink it, she said, just call me. And I did. The days that followed felt different. She'd text me first thing in the morning, good luck at work today, and again at night. I hope you're not still staring at screens. It felt effortless, like she'd always been part of my life. She was warm, charming. She made me laugh even when my days felt heavy. She listened, really listened, in a way no one else had before. And when we finally went out again, it felt natural, like something I'd been waiting for without realizing it. There's a saying, when something feels too perfect, it probably is. But back then, I wasn't thinking about red flags. I was thinking about how lucky I was to find someone like her. Our relationship moved fast. Too fast, maybe. Within weeks, she knew my routines, my favorite places, even my passwords. She said she liked helping me stay organized. I laughed it off. I was flattered that she cared so much. She started spending nights at my place, cooking, cleaning, leaving little notes on the fridge. One morning I found one that said, "You make me feel safe." Safe. It's ironic now, because she was the last person I should have trusted. Looking back, there were signs, little things that didn't make sense. Once she said she had to fly out for work, but when I called her, her number was disconnected for 2 days. She said her phone was broken. I believed her. Another time, she got upset when I mentioned introducing her to my friends. She said she wanted to keep things just between us. She said people ruin beautiful things when they start talking. That line stuck with me. At the time, it sounded poetic. Now it sounds like a warning I ignored. You see, Clara had this way of turning every question into a moment of vulnerability. If I asked where she'd been, she'd tear up, just a little, and say, "You don't trust me?" If I asked about her past, she'd say, "Why does it matter? I'm here with you now." And I'd stop asking, because I didn't want to lose her. That's the thing about manipulation. It doesn't start loud. It starts soft, gentle, disguised as love. Weeks turned into months. My friends noticed I was distant. I started skipping hangouts, avoiding family dinners. Clara said they were a distraction, that no one understood me the way she did. And maybe she was right. Or maybe she just wanted me alone. It's hard to tell when you're inside the storm. But one night, one small, simple night, everything shifted. It was late. She was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message preview lit up the screen. I wasn't trying to snoop, I swear. But the name caught my eye. "Can't wait to see you again." My heart stopped. I stared at the screen, my mind spinning. Who was that? Why would someone text her that? I tried to ignore it. Told myself it was a friend, a joke, anything. But the seed of doubt had been planted. And once that happens, love starts to rot. Slowly. Quietly. From the inside out. When she came out, towel wrapped around her, she saw my face. "What's wrong?" she asked. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to ask. But something in her eyes, that calm, unreadable look, made me hesitate. Instead, I smiled. "Nothing. Just tired." She smiled back, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Don't ever doubt me." I told her I wouldn't. But in my heart, I already had. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment, every word, every glance. Was it possible? Could she really be lying to me? Part of me wanted to believe she wasn't. Another part, the quieter, sharper part, whispered that I'd been a fool. Still, I told myself I was overreacting. People flirt online all the time, right? Maybe it was nothing, but deep down, I knew because her phone never left her side again. I knew because she started locking it, changing passwords, hiding things. And I knew because every time I asked about her day, she grew a little colder. The warmth that once filled the room when she walked in, it was fading, replaced by something else, something calculated. I started noticing how she'd talk to certain people, the tone she used, the charm she turned on like a switch. She was magnetic, but in a way that made you feel drained afterward. Like she took a piece of you every time. Once, she called me by another name. She laughed it off, said she was tired. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But something inside me cracked that day. If you've ever been betrayed, you know the exact moment it happens. It's not when you find proof. It's when your heart knows, and your mind starts catching up. That's where I was, suspended between denial and truth. Still, I couldn't walk away. Because no matter how much evidence I saw, no matter how many lies she told, I loved her. And that love, blind, stubborn, desperate, was exactly what she counted on. Now, looking back, I realized something chilling. She never stumbled into my life by accident. She walked in with purpose. Every word, every smile, every tear. It was all part of something bigger. And by the time I saw it, it was already too late. Sometimes I wonder, if I hadn't walked into that cafe that night, if I hadn't sat at her table, would my life have been different? Maybe. But then again, maybe she would have found another way. Because women like Clara, they don't wait for love. They hunt for it. They find people who will believe in them, and they turn that belief into power. I was her perfect target. Lonely, trusting, willing to give everything. And she was everything I ever wanted, until I realized she was everything I should have feared. But the real story? It doesn't start with how she entered my life. It starts with how she almost destroyed it. Because what she didn't know was that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. And when I finally uncovered her secret, the secret she'd spent months hiding, her perfect world started to crumble. But that part of the story comes later. For now, all you need to know is this. She was the best thing that ever happened to me, until the day I found out who she really was. People always say the start of a love story is the best part. The butterflies, the excitement, the feeling that the world suddenly has color again. And they're right. In the beginning, everything with Clara felt real. It felt like love was finally on my side. After that rainy night in the cafe, Clara and I started seeing each other more often. At first it was simple. Short coffee meetups after work, random phone calls that lasted until one of us fell asleep. But slowly, our conversations started to mean more. She had this way of listening that made me feel like every word I said mattered. When I told her about my stressful job, she didn't just nod. She'd ask questions, laugh at my little jokes, even send memes to cheer me up the next morning. It was strange. Actually, how quickly she seemed to understand me. She remembered things most people forgot. Like how I always tapped my pen twice before focusing on something serious. Or how I hated Sunday evenings because they reminded me of unfinished dreams. She made me feel seen. And that's dangerous, because once someone makes you feel that way, you stop guarding yourself. Our third date was at this small park near the river. She wore a pale blue dress, and the wind kept brushing her hair across her face. She didn't bother fixing it. She just laughed and said, "Nature doesn't care about perfect." I remember thinking, neither do I, not with her. We sat by the water, eating cheap sandwiches and talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her childhood, growing up in a small town, her parents always moving for work, never really belonging anywhere. "I guess that's why I like people who feel grounded," she said softly. You make me feel like I could finally stay somewhere." That line stayed with me for weeks. It sounded so genuine, so full of warmth. Now, I wonder how many times she'd said it before, to how many people. But back then, it felt real. And when something feels that good, you don't question it. She started showing up at my office sometimes, waiting outside with coffee. My coworkers teased me. "Man, you've got it good," one of them said. "She actually brings you lunch? That's wife material. And I'd smile, pretending not to blush. Clara would wave at them through the glass and hand me a paper bag with my favorite sandwich. You need to eat, she'd say. You get so caught up in work. It became a ritual. Little acts of care that stitched her deeper into my routine. One morning, she even helped me reorganize my desk. She laughed when she found an old photo of me and my college friends. You look so innocent, she teased. I was, I said. She smiled. I'll try not to ruin that. Funny how a joke can age like a prophecy. A few weeks later, she invited me to her apartment for the first time. It was small but cozy, filled with candles, soft lights, and this faint smell of vanilla. The walls were lined with framed quotes like, "Trust the timing of your life," and "Love is the safest place." I remember thinking how fitting that was. She was my safe place, or so I thought. She cooked pasta that night, badly, to be honest. But she laughed at herself, saying, "I burn food, but I make up for it with charm." And she did. We danced in her living room, barefoot, with some old jazz playing in the background. It wasn't perfect. We stumbled, we laughed, but it was real, or at least it felt that way. As weeks turned into months, Clara and I became inseparable. She met my friends, though reluctantly. They liked her, even if they said she was a bit mysterious. "She's lovely," my best friend Ethan said one night after she left. "But there's something about her eyes, man. Like she's hiding something." I brushed it off. "You just don't know her yet," he shrugged. "Maybe. Just don't lose yourself, all right?" I laughed, thinking he was overreacting. But deep down, a small voice whispered that maybe he wasn't wrong. Clara was a master at making every moment feel meaningful. Once, after a rough week at work, she surprised me with a handwritten letter. It wasn't long, just a few sentences. "You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You just have to be honest. And I love how honest you are." Those words hit me hard. I'd never been the type to receive love so openly, so confidently. And when someone tells you they love your honesty, you assume they're being honest too. We started taking weekend trips, nothing fancy, just drives to nearby towns, staying in cheap motels, exploring places neither of us had seen. She'd always find the best photo spots, always ask strangers to take our pictures. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at the photos for too long afterward. "You really like pictures, huh?" I once joked. She smiled. "They remind me what's real." At the time, that answer sounded deep. Now it sounds rehearsed. There were moments that should have made me pause, like how she avoided talking about her family, or how she never mentioned friends from before we met. Whenever I asked, she'd say something like, "They're complicated," or, "I prefer to leave the past in the past." And because I wanted to be respectful, I didn't push. That's what love does. It makes you gentle in all the wrong ways. One night, while we were lying on the couch, she turned to me suddenly and asked, "Would you still love me if I wasn't who you thought I was?" I laughed, thinking she was being playful. "Of course," I said. "Why?" She just smiled faintly. "No reason. Just wondering." And then she kissed me before I could ask more. That moment, that strange question, should have meant something. But I let it slip away. We talked about moving in together. It was her idea, actually. She said rent was expensive and that we practically lived together anyway. I hesitated at first, but she knew exactly what to say. "Think about how much easier life would be," she said softly. "You'd come home to me every night. We could build something real. Something real." Those were her exact words, and I believed her, every single one. The first week she moved in was magical. We cooked dinner together, stayed up late watching old movies, and fell asleep holding hands. She'd wake me up with breakfast some mornings, whispering, "You deserve someone who takes care of you." It all felt so perfect, too perfect. Because underneath all that sweetness, there were little cracks I didn't want to see. Like how she always needed to know where I was. Not in a clingy way, but in a curious, constant way. She'd ask, "Who are you talking to?" Or, "Why did you get home late?" At first, it felt flattering, like she cared. But later, it started feeling like something else. One evening, she was on my laptop, saying she wanted to make a playlist for me. I didn't think much of it. But a few days later, I noticed she'd logged into some of my accounts, my email, even my banking app. When I asked about it, she laughed. "Oh, come on. You really think I'd steal from you? You're paranoid!" I apologized, like a fool. Because when someone you love calls you paranoid, you start questioning your own gut. Still, I couldn't deny how happy she made me most days. The way she'd hold my hand in public, whisper, "I'm proud of you," when I doubted myself. It all felt like the kind of love I'd been waiting for. But sometimes, late at night, when I'd wake up and see her staring at her phone in the dark, I'd feel this strange unease. Her face would be lit by the screen, her expression blank, distant. When she noticed me awake, she'd smile and say, "Just checking emails." And I'd pretend to believe her. They say love blinds you, but I think it's more than that. Love convinces you that what you see isn't what it looks like. It teaches you to rewrite the truth into something prettier. So that's what I did. Every time something felt off, I told myself I was overthinking. Every time her story didn't add up, I reminded myself that everyone deserves privacy. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. It was in the way she changed the subject whenever I asked about her work. It was in the way she avoided calls when I was around. It was in the way she smiled. That perfect practice smile, whenever I questioned anything. Still, I held on. Because when love feels real, you don't want to believe it's a lie. You cling to the warmth, even when the fire starts burning you. And for a while, I convinced myself that Clara was everything I needed, that she was the missing piece in a life that finally felt complete. But as it turns out, some puzzles only look complete when you're standing too close to see the missing parts. Back then, I didn't realize that every "I love you" came with a shadow. Every promise hid a secret. And those little cracks I ignored, the ones that seemed harmless, were just the beginning of something much darker. Because love wasn't the only thing growing between us. A lie was too, and soon, it would destroy everything I thought was real. They say lies don't appear all at once. They leak out, like water through a cracked ceiling. At first it's just a drop, then another, until one day, the whole thing comes crashing down. For a while, I didn't even notice the cracks. Or maybe I just didn't want to. It started small. A story she told me once about her old job didn't match the version she told a friend on the phone. The first time, she said she used to work for a marketing firm in the city. The second time, it was a PR agency somewhere abroad. I laughed when I heard it. "Which one was it?" I asked playfully. She froze for a second, then smiled. "You remember too many details." "It was both, kind of. I worked remotely for one while helping another." Sounded believable enough. But her tone, the way her voice tightened just a bit, didn't sit right. Still, I shrugged it off. Love makes excuses faster than logic ever can. Then there was the money thing. One evening, she asked me to lend her a few $100s. Said her client payment was delayed and she'd return it in a week. No big deal. I trusted her, except the week passed. Then too, when I gently asked about it, she sighed, almost offended. "Do you really think I'd take advantage of you?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I thought you knew me better than that." And just like that, the guilt flipped. Suddenly, I was the one apologizing. I held her hand, told her it was fine. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." She smiled again. "You're too good to me." Funny thing is, I believed that was a compliment. As the months went by, the stories kept changing. She told me her parents lived overseas. Then one night, after a few drinks, she mentioned visiting her mom. Last weekend. When I asked, "Wait, I thought she lived abroad," she blinked, like she'd just woken from a dream. "Oh, I meant a friend's mom. I call her that sometimes," I nodded. Pretended it made sense, but inside my thoughts twisted tighter. One afternoon, I got home early. She didn't know I was coming. Her phone was on the counter, unlocked, music playing. A message popped up, a man's name I didn't recognize. "Dinner tomorrow?" Before I could read more, she walked in. She saw the screen, grabbed the phone instantly, and smiled like nothing happened. "Work stuff," she said. "Just a client." "Clients ask you to dinner?" I asked, half joking. She leaned closer, brushed my cheek, and whispered, "You sound jealous." And just like that, the conversation was over. But later that night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind whispering things I didn't want to hear. Love is strange. You can see the lie right in front of you, and still your heart will beg your mind to stay quiet. Because admitting the truth means admitting the dream is dying. So I kept pretending everything was fine. I told myself she was just stressed, just busy, just misunderstood. But the truth was, I was scared. Scared that if I pushed too hard, I'd lose her. And losing her felt unthinkable. It wasn't just the stories that changed. It was her, too. She started becoming distant. The good morning texts came later. The "I love you" sounded thinner, like echoes of something once real. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at her phone, smiling in a way she never did with me. Other times, she'd step outside to take calls, always saying, "Just work, babe. You wouldn't understand." But deep down, I knew I understood more than she thought. I just wasn't ready to face it. One night, I decided to surprise her. She told me she was working late at a client's office. So I drove across town with her favorite takeout, ready to cheer her up. When I arrived, the building was dark. No lights, no cars in the lot. I tried calling her. No answer. I texted, "Hey, I'm outside." Nothing. An hour later, she called back. Her voice was calm, but there was something strange about it. Too rehearsed. "Babe, I just left. My phone died, sorry. You didn't have to come all the way here. Where are you now?" I asked. "I'm driving home," she said quickly. "See you soon?" And just like that, she ended the call. When she got home, she kissed me like nothing happened. I wanted to ask, to push, to make her explain. But when she smiled, when she touched my face and said, "You're my safe place," all my questions dissolved. Because that's what she did best. She disarmed me with love. Still, my mind kept collecting things. Small, almost invisible inconsistencies. A bracelet she said was from her sister. But she told me once she was an only child. A friend she mentioned meeting. But no social media posts, no photos, no evidence they existed. Emails she'd hide the moment I walked into the room. At first I told myself I was paranoid. Then I told myself it didn't matter. Then I stopped telling myself anything at all. Because I was starting to believe that love shouldn't feel this confusing. The turning point came one weekend when we went to visit a local art exhibit. We were walking through the gallery when someone called out her name, not Clara. A different name. "Sophie?" We both froze. A man in a gray suit walked up smiling. "Sophie, it's been ages. How have you been?" Clara's face changed. Just for a second, but I saw it, the panic behind her smile. "Oh, you must be mistaken," she said, laughing nervously. "I get that a lot," the man frowned. "Really? You look exactly like—" Before he could finish, she grabbed my arm and said, "Let's go. This place is too crowded." Outside, I tried to joke. "Sophie, huh?" She didn't laugh. "Please, just drop it," she said quietly. I didn't press, but my stomach turned. That night, she acted normal again. Laughing, cooking, pretending like nothing happened. But I couldn't stop thinking about that man's face. He looked genuinely confused, even hurt. And for the first time, I started to wonder who she really was. From that moment on, everything she did felt like a performance. The way she hugged me, the way she said my name, even the way she looked at me. It all felt rehearsed. I tried to shake it off, to go back to believing the version of her I'd fallen for. But once you start doubting, you can't go back. You start seeing patterns, hidden meanings, and the smallest lie starts to feel like thunder. One evening, while she was showering, her phone buzzed again. This time, the name wasn't hidden. "Ethan, call me when you're alone." Ethan, my best friend. My stomach dropped. I froze, staring at the screen as 100 thoughts crashed into each other. Could it be a coincidence? Maybe he needed something from her? Maybe the shower stopped. I quickly put the phone down, heart pounding. When she came out, I couldn't even look at her the same way. She noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I lied. But she could feel the distance. She always could. That night, she climbed into bed and rested her head on my chest. "I love you," she whispered. It should have made me happy. It used to, but this time, it felt heavy. Because I didn't know if it was real anymore. Over the next few days, the silence between us grew louder. She acted sweet, but her eyes were elsewhere. Her phone stayed glued to her hand. She'd step outside to take calls, whispering, always whispering. And though I wanted to confront her, I didn't. Because I wasn't ready to hear the truth. I wasn't ready to admit that the woman I loved might have been lying to me from the start. Looking back, I realize that's the cruelest part about betrayal. It doesn't come with a warning. It creeps in through the cracks you refuse to see. And by the time you finally look closely enough to notice, it's already too late. At that point, I still told myself I could fix things. I still believed love could heal lies. But deep down, I knew the story was changing. Shifting from a romance into something darker. Because every lie she told left a shadow. And those shadows were growing longer by the day. There are moments in life that split you in half. Before it happens, you think you're strong, grounded, untouchable. But after, you're just a shell of who you were. That night, the night everything changed, was the night I realized I'd been living in a story someone else had written for me. A story built on lies, half-truths, and sweet promises that were never meant to be kept. It was a Thursday, I remember, because Clara had been working late again. The phrase had started to sound like an excuse, but I'd learned to swallow my questions. Every time I asked, she made me feel guilty, like I was being paranoid. So, I didn't ask this time, but something felt off. The kind of off you can't explain. You just feel it in your bones. She'd left the house wearing a black dress I'd never seen before. When I asked where she was going, she smiled and said, "Client dinner. I'll be back before midnight." I kissed her on the cheek and watched her leave. But as the door closed behind her, a strange cold settled over me. An hour later, I got a call from my best friend, Ethan. It went straight to voicemail. I thought about calling him back, but decided against it. I was too distracted, too uneasy. I tried to watch TV, but nothing held my attention. The clock ticked louder than usual. By 10 p.m., she still hadn't texted. Midnight came. No word. At 12:37, my phone buzzed. A message from Clara. Don't wait up. Staying over at a friend's? Early meeting tomorrow? I stared at the text for a long time. It didn't feel right. Not the tone, not the phrasing. She never said a friend. She always said the person's name, and then my phone buzzed again. Another message, but not from her. It was from Ethan. Bro, can we talk tomorrow? Something important. My stomach dropped. The timing, the tone, the unease that had been haunting me for weeks. It all clicked together in one terrible realization. I opened her message again, then his. Her saying she was staying over with a friend. Him saying he had something important to tell me. My heart started pounding. No, it couldn't be. It couldn't. I told myself I was overreacting. That maybe he just wanted to talk about work or life or anything else. But my mind wouldn't stop spinning. I went to the kitchen for water, trying to calm down. But my hands were shaking. And then something caught my eye. Her laptop bag on the counter. She'd forgotten it. It was open, slightly unzipped. Inside, her work laptop and a folder labeled Invoices. I knew I shouldn't look. I really did. But curiosity has a way of becoming survival when your gut screams that something's wrong. I opened the folder. Inside were papers, contracts, receipts, and payment records. But none of them had her real name on them. At the top of every page, printed neatly, was another name. Sophie Hart. My breath caught. Sophie. The name that man at the gallery had called her. I flipped through the documents faster. There were photos attached to a few. Professional headshots of Clara, or Sophie, smiling confidently next to different company logos, different identities, different jobs. Every file was tied to a different company name, all fake, all linked to accounts she'd created using other aliases. I sat there, staring at the papers, my mind racing through every moment we'd shared, every lie she'd told, every story that didn't add up, and suddenly it all made sense. The disappearing acts, the mixed-up job stories, the client dinners, the borrowed money that never came back. She wasn't who she said she was. She'd never been. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in silence, waiting for her to come home. When the sun rose, I still hadn't heard a word. At 8:10 a.m., the door creaked open. She walked in like nothing happened, humming softly, holding a bag of coffee. Morning, she said with that same perfect smile. You're up early. I just stared at her. She noticed immediately. What's wrong? I held up one of the papers. Who's Sophie Hart? Her face froze, just for a second, but it was enough. Then she laughed. Oh, that? It's a work alias. Everyone in marketing has one. Keeps things professional. Really? I asked quietly. Then why are there bank accounts under that name? Why are there contracts signed with it? The color drained from her face. She tried to recover, shaking her head. You're overthinking again. You always do this when you're stressed. Stop, I said. Just tell me the truth. She took a step closer. The truth? You want the truth? Her voice softened, almost pitying. You wouldn't understand. I didn't mean to lie. Not really. I just didn't mean to lie? I interrupted. My voice cracked. You lied about who you are. Her eyes flickered with something. Guilt. Anger. Maybe both. Everything I did because I had to, she said finally. You think the world's kind to people who start with nothing? I had to survive. I shook my head. So what was I then? Part of your survival plan? She looked away. You were safe, kind, easy to love? Easy to love? I repeated, my voice trembling. You used me, Clara, or Sophie, or whoever you are. Tears filled her eyes. It wasn't supposed to go this far. But I couldn't listen anymore. I felt like the room was closing in, like the air itself didn't belong to me anymore. I walked away from her, but she grabbed my arm. Please, she whispered. Don't hate me. I turned to her, and for a split second, I saw the woman I thought I knew. The laughter, the warmth, the softness, but it was all smoke. An illusion built on deceit. I pulled my arm free. I don't even know who you are, I said. So tell me, who am I to you? She didn't answer. She packed her things in silence that morning. Every move she made was slow, deliberate, like she'd done this before. Maybe she had. Before leaving, she turned to me. I'm sorry, she said quietly, but you'll thank me someday. Thank you? I almost laughed. For what? For turning my life into a lie? She hesitated, then whispered, "For teaching you how to see people for who they really are." And just like that, she was gone. The door shut, and everything inside me collapsed. The silence that followed was unbearable, the kind that seeps into your bones and stays there. I sat on the floor, surrounded by memories that no longer made sense. Every photo, every note, every "I love you," all lies, and yet I couldn't bring myself to hate her. Not yet, because part of me still wanted to believe there had been some truth in what we had. That maybe, somewhere between the lies and manipulation, she'd actually cared. But as the hours passed, reality sank in deeper. She hadn't just broken my heart. She'd stolen something else: my trust, my peace, my ability to believe in people. Later that evening, I got another message, from Ethan again. "I didn't know how to tell you. I'm sorry, man. She reached out to me months ago. Said she was starting a business and needed advice. I swear I didn't know you two were together. By the time I realized, it was too late. She asked me not to tell you." My hands shook as I read it. She'd been in contact with him, behind my back, for months, and he hadn't said a word. I felt sick. Betrayed twice in the same day. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about love anymore. This was about power. She'd built her whole life on manipulating people, emotionally, financially, socially. I was just another step in her climb. But if she thought she could walk away untouched, she didn't know me as well as she thought. The sun had set again by the time I moved. I walked to the table, picked up the papers, every fake name, every false identity, every lie she'd buried in neat professional folders. I could have burned them, deleted everything, tried to forget, but I didn't. Because for the first time in months, I felt something stronger than heartbreak, something colder, something sharper: determination. If she wanted to use me as a pawn, she was about to see what happens when the pawn starts playing the game back. As I looked at the folder one last time, I whispered to the empty room, "You should have never lied to me, Clara." Then I sat down, opened my laptop, and began tracing her digital footprints. Every name, every fake company, every alias, and somewhere deep inside, beneath the pain and confusion, a plan was forming. Because this story wasn't going to end with me as the fool. No. This time, I was going to be the one writing the ending. They say heartbreak doesn't kill you, but that's a lie. It does, just not all at once. It kills you slowly, piece by piece, memory by memory, until you can barely recognize the person staring back in the mirror. In the days after Clara left, that's exactly who I became. A hollow version of myself. The house felt like a museum of broken promises. Her perfume still lingered in the air. Her mug still sat on the counter. Lipstick faded but not gone. And every time I walked past it, it felt like she was mocking me. I tried to distract myself at first. Work, exercise, anything to keep my mind busy. But no matter what I did, her face would find me again. In songs, in random scents. In the silence between breaths, I kept asking myself the same questions. How could I have been so blind? Was any of it ever real? What did she really want from me? There were no answers, only echoes. At night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her walking away. Calm, unapologetic, like she'd rehearsed it. Meanwhile, I was the fool left behind, clutching the pieces of a life that had never really belonged to me. A week passed like that. A blur of emptiness and restless nights. Friends texted, coworkers called, but I ignored everyone. Except one person, Ethan. The same friend who'd unknowingly been tangled in her web. He came over one evening, uninvited, holding 2 cups of coffee. When I opened the door, he looked at me for a moment and said, "You look terrible." "Thanks," I muttered. "That's exactly what I needed to hear." He handed me the coffee and sat down on the couch. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said quietly, "You don't have to talk about it, but I'm sorry, man. I really am." I stared at the floor. "You knew, Ethan. You knew she was hiding something. Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't know what it was," he said. "At first, she told me she was running a business. Then she said she was consulting. She was so convincing. And honestly, I didn't think it was my place to question her." I clenched my jaw. "She used both of us." "Yeah," he admitted. "But she can't keep doing that forever. Eventually, people like her slip up." "Maybe," I said quietly. "But not before they ruin someone else." He looked at me with a seriousness I hadn't seen before. "Then maybe you're the one who's supposed to stop her." That sentence hit me like a spark in the dark. I laughed bitterly. "Stop her? Ethan, she's already gone. She's probably in another city by now, living another lie." He shrugged. "Maybe, but she's left footprints. They always do. You said she had fake companies, fake names? Someone that careful doesn't make that many identities without making mistakes. I leaned back, letting his words sink in. For days, I'd been drowning in my own self-pity, replaying what happened like a broken record. But hearing him say that, something inside me shifted. Because he was right. I had evidence. Names, documents, accounts. I'd just been too hurt to see their value. That night, after he left, I sat in my office staring at the folder again, the one labeled invoices. For the first time, I didn't feel heartbreak, I felt curiosity. I started combing through every document, line by line. Each fake company name was tied to a different alias. Sophie Hart, Clara M., Jenna R. Each one had different clients, different addresses, different phone numbers. At first it looked random, but then I noticed something. A pattern. Each client she worked for was a small business, mostly startups or independent ventures. And each time she convinced the owner to pay her up front for consulting services, then disappeared. She wasn't just lying to me, she was running a scheme. My stomach turned as I realized how deep it went. But the deeper I looked, the less afraid I felt. For the first time in weeks, I had purpose. The next morning, I called Ethan again. I think I found something, I told him. He came over, and we spent hours piecing the puzzle together. Old messages, bank statements, email trails. We created a map of her aliases, her fake companies, even her online profiles. Man, Ethan muttered, scrolling through a page. She's good. These profiles look so real. Yeah, I said. She's been doing this for years. He looked up at me. So what's the plan? I didn't have an answer yet, but one was forming. I don't know, I said slowly. But I'm not letting her get away with this. Over the next few days, I transformed my pain into obsession. Every morning, I woke up early, brewed coffee, and started digging. I contacted the companies listed on the documents. Some replied, some didn't. But the ones that did confirmed what I feared. They'd all been scammed by a woman matching her description. She said she was helping us with branding. One small business owner told me over the phone. We wired her an advance payment and she vanished. How long ago was that? I asked. 3 months. We filed a complaint, but the account she used was closed by the time investigators looked into it. 3 months. Right around the time she and I started getting serious. She'd been running her little operation while pretending to be my partner, using my stability as her cover. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was strategy. Some nights, I'd catch myself staring out the window, wondering if she was out there somewhere, smiling that same smile at another man, selling the same dream. Part of me wanted to warn whoever came next. The other part wanted to wait, to let her feel the same helplessness she'd made me feel. I wasn't sure which part would win. Ethan became my anchor through it all. He'd drop by, bring food, crack jokes, remind me I wasn't completely broken. But one night, he said something that stuck with me. You know, he said, sipping his drink. The fact that you're still standing says a lot. Most people would have drowned in this kind of betrayal. But you're still here, still fighting. I don't feel like I'm fighting, I admitted. I feel like I'm barely holding together. He nodded. That's how it starts. Pain turns into strength, one small choice at a time. You just made your first one. You chose to stop being her victim. His words lingered long after he left. Because he was right again. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. The next morning, I opened a new document on my laptop and titled it, The Truth About Clara. I started writing everything I knew. Every name, every account, every inconsistency. It wasn't about revenge anymore, not yet. It was about understanding. Why did she do it? How many others had she hurt? What did she gain from all of this? I started building timelines, cross-checking details. Piece by piece, her web of lies became clearer. And as the picture formed, one thing became painfully obvious. She wasn't just chasing money. She was chasing power, control. Every relationship she built was transactional, a means to an end. She didn't love people. She studied them, used them like tools to build the image she wanted the world to see. And me? I was just another project. But here's the thing about projects. Sometimes they backfire. I knew her patterns now. I knew how she operated. If I played this right, I could turn her own tricks against her. It wasn't about destroying her reputation or publicly humiliating her. Not yet. It was about finding out the truth, all of it. Because somewhere beneath the lies, I was sure there was a story that explained why she became who she was. And if I could find that story, I could end hers the right way. By the end of that week, I had gathered enough evidence to fill an entire binder. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I closed it, placed it on the table, and whispered to myself, "This isn't over." For the first time since she walked out, I didn't feel broken. I felt focused. The sadness hadn't disappeared. It was still there, heavy and raw. But it wasn't controlling me anymore. It was fuel. And as I looked around that quiet house, the same one that used to echo with her laughter, I realized something. I wasn't alone anymore. Not really. Because I had something she'd never have. Truth on my side. And that truth was going to set me free. The thing about betrayal is that once you've seen behind the mask, you can never unsee it. Every memory, every smile, every "I love you" becomes a clue. A breadcrumb leading you to the truth you never wanted to find. For weeks, I'd been the fool who couldn't move on. But now, that same pain had sharpened into something else, a quiet determination. I wasn't chasing closure anymore. I was chasing answers, and I was ready to go wherever they led me. It started small. A simple search of the names in those documents she left behind. Most of them led nowhere. The companies didn't exist. The phone numbers were disconnected. The addresses were either abandoned offices or P.O. boxes. But one name stood out: Hartwell Consulting. It wasn't on the list of fake businesses, but I remembered her mentioning it once, early in our relationship. She'd claimed she was working with them as a freelancer. So I looked it up. The company was real, a small firm that helped startups secure investors. And according to their website, they'd recently filed a fraud report. My pulse quickened. I found a contact email and sent a message pretending to be a potential client, just to see if they'd reply. 2 days later, they did. Their message was polite, but something in the signature caught my attention. The name of their managing director, Daniel Marsh. I didn't think twice. I called him. "Mr. Marsh?" I said when he picked up. "I'm reaching out regarding a consultant you might have worked with recently. Someone named Clara or possibly Sophie Hart." There was a pause, a long one. Then he sighed heavily. "You're not the first person to ask about her," he said. That sentence alone made my heart drop. He went on to explain how she'd approached his firm a few months ago, posing as a brand strategist. She'd offered to help connect their clients to new investors, and for a while, she delivered results. Until one day, she vanished, taking with her confidential data and access to client funds. They'd tried tracking her, but she disappeared without a trace. "We even hired a private investigator," Marsh said. "Nothing. It's like she never existed." I thanked him and hung up, my mind spinning. She hadn't just lied to me or a few small companies. She was operating on a much bigger scale. Professional-level scams, digital manipulation, and an ability to disappear like smoke. But she did exist, and I was going to prove it. That night, I went through every old message, every photo, every social media post she'd ever shared. I looked for inconsistencies. Anything that didn't match her stories. And there they were. Different hairstyles within days of each other. Photos tagged in different cities, sometimes on the same date. Friends I'd never met, with profiles that looked suspiciously fake. It was like she'd built her entire digital life out of mirrors. Zoomed in on one particular photo. Selfie she'd sent me months ago from her office. Behind her was a framed certificate. I hadn't noticed it before, but now I saw the name clearly. Sophie Hartwell. I checked the metadata of the image. It was taken 2 years before we met, so that meant one thing. She hadn't just created these personas recently. She'd been living double lives for years. I decided to follow the digital trail deeper. Her emails, for example. She'd used multiple addresses, some tied to her supposed clients. I started cross-referencing them with the names in her fake documents. That's when I found something strange. One of her email addresses was linked to an online payment platform, the same one I'd used to send her money once when she said her business card got declined. When I checked the receipt, I noticed something odd. The recipient name wasn't Clara Miller. It was Hartwell Group Limited. My hands trembled as I realized it was all connected. Every alias, every fake business, all of it pointed back to one central network, Hartwell. She'd built an entire empire of deception around that name, and then it hit me. Maybe she wasn't acting alone. I started digging into public records, company filings, business registrations, domain names. Most were dead ends, but one caught my attention. A domain registered to hartwellgroup.net. The registration email? It belonged to someone else, a man named David Cross. I didn't recognize the name, but when I searched it, I found old photos of him on business blogs, standing next to her, smiling, arm around her waist. They'd posed as business partners at networking events, giving talks about innovative investment models. But there was more. I found a news article from a few years ago, a small blurb about a woman named Sophie Hartwell and her partner, David Cross, accused of running a fake consulting firm. The charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. She'd done this before, over and over again. My heart raced as I printed out everything: screenshots, articles, email headers. I spread them across the table like pieces of a crime scene. For the first time, I could see the full picture. She wasn't just a manipulative girlfriend or a liar trying to get ahead. She was a professional con artist, and I'd been her cover. While she played businesswoman by day, she played perfect girlfriend by night, using my stability to make her story believable. It was brilliant, in a sick way, but even the smartest players leave traces behind, and she'd made one fatal mistake. Me. The more I learned, the more obsessed I became. I started tracing her patterns, how she moved from one city to another, how she switched names every few months. I even tracked a few of her old clients, pretending to be an investigator. Some hung up immediately, afraid or embarrassed, but one woman named Rachel agreed to talk. I trusted her, Rachel said, her voice trembling over the phone. She said she'd help me secure funding for my app. I gave her everything: bank info, contracts, passwords. She ghosted me 2 weeks later. My startup was ruined. I could hear the pain in her voice. The same kind I'd felt. She used your name, didn't she? I asked. Hartwell Consulting? Rachel hesitated. Yes. Wait, how do you know that name? Because, I said quietly, she did the same thing to me. We talked for nearly an hour, sharing details, dates, names. And when I hung up, I had what I needed: confirmation. Clara wasn't just deceiving people. She was destroying lives. One night, around 2 a.m., I sat in my office surrounded by notes and files. The walls were covered in printouts, photos, lines connecting dates and aliases, like something out of a detective movie. It looked insane, but it made sense to me, because somewhere in that chaos was the key to exposing her. I took a deep breath and started sorting through the files. Then my laptop pinged, a new email, no sender name, no subject line, just one sentence inside: "You should stop digging, Daniel. You don't know what you're getting into." My blood ran cold. It came from one of her old email addresses, the one tied to Sophie Hart. She knew. Somehow, she knew I was investigating her. For a moment, fear crept in. Maybe she was watching me. Maybe she had someone following me. But that fear only lasted a second before turning into something else: defiance. I replied with 3 words: "I'm not stopping." And I meant it. From that moment, I knew there was no going back. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about justice. Every lie she told, every person she used, every dollar she stole, it all led to the same truth. She believed no one could touch her. She believed she was smarter, faster, untouchable. But I had something she didn't: persistence. And I was going to use it to tear down her carefully built illusion, piece by piece. By the end of that week, I had everything I needed: a full map of her fake businesses, her online aliases, her former victims, even her supposed partner. I compiled it all into a single folder labeled The Hartwell Files. When I closed it, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: control. Clara had spent years perfecting her act, deceiving everyone around her. But she'd underestimated the one person who'd once believed in her completely. Because love might have blinded me before. But now, it had given me the perfect motivation to expose her. And as I stared at that folder, her entire empire reduced to evidence, I knew exactly what I had to do next. It was time to stop chasing her shadow and bring her secrets into the light. If there's one thing I'd learned about Clara, about Sophie, about whoever she wanted to be that week, it was this: she loved an audience. She thrived on lights, on applause, on the soft hum of people believing in her. She didn't hide in the dark. She walked into rooms and made herself the center of attention. That's how she convinced so many people she was real. So if I wanted to catch her, I had to build a stage she couldn't resist. The first rule of my plan was simple: act like a fool again. Pretend to be the gullible guy who still loved her, the one who would forgive and forget. If she thought I was disarmed, if she believed I'd been broken and easy to pick up again, she would let her guard down. She always did, with people who still believed in the myth of her. But pretending was the easy part. The hard part was building something real enough to draw her out, and public enough that when the mask came off, she wouldn't be able to scurry away and ignore the damage. I didn't just want to expose her lies to myself. I wanted everyone she'd used to see them all at once. The victims, the partners, the friends she'd lied to, and the people who still thought she was an angel. I called Ethan first. He arrived with that same no-nonsense look he'd always had, like he'd already done something halfway and was waiting for me to finish it. "You sure about this?" he asked. Not because he doubted me, but because he knew what this would do to me if it went wrong. "I'm sure," I said, "and I need you with me." He nodded, and we made a list. David Cross, the partner from the old articles, Daniel Marsh from Hartwell Consulting, Rachel and the other victims who'd trusted her with their startups, a handful of journalists who'd reported on fraud before. We needed credibility, witnesses, and a public stage. Next, we needed bait. Clara was obsessed with status, a well-placed investor, a speech at a networking event, a feature in some magazine. She loved the idea of being the rescuer, the one who could save failing startups. So Ethan and I created a fake opportunity tailored to that craving. A high-profile startup pitch event, with a supposed investor from out of town offering a six-figure seed check to the best applicant. We booked a small, well-lit co-working space downtown, somewhere classy she'd recognize as real, and created invitation materials, an Instagram page, and a fake but convincing investor bio. We named the event the Founders Night. It sounded official. It looked official. When the investor, a friend of a friend who'd agreed to play the part, sent an email to her alias, it read like something made of gold. A direct message saying, "We loved your portfolio. We'd like to discuss a deal. Come present at Founders Night. Exclusive invite." I typed the message and felt like I was forging a weapon. Then we assembled the army. Rachel agreed to come, as did two other women whose businesses had folded after paying Clara. Daniel Marsh said he'd attend to give a short warning speech if things went sideways. I quietly reached out to a freelance investigative reporter I'd met at a bar months ago, someone who smelled a story and loved justice more than clicks. She agreed to be there, not to break a story publicly until we had concrete evidence, but to document the event and verify everything if we needed to go to the press. We crafted the trap so that it looked like a career-saving opportunity, the exact kind Clara sold to people. The invite was personal, flattering, and urgent. We peppered it with the same language she used when she wanted to convince someone to act: impact, leverage, partner, growth. She would not resist. Then came the mechanics. I learned to be careful like a detective. We hired a small AV team, a silent camera in the corner, microphones that could pick up side conversations, and a backup phone to record everything. Ethan, who owed me more than one saved weekend, agreed to be my wingman, sitting 2 rows back with a notebook and a poker face. Daniel Marsh would stand up mid-presentation and ask questions about invoices. Rachel would speak about her project and watch Clara's reaction carefully. The reporter would be recording and making notes for a potential exposé. Legal safety was next. If we were going to accuse someone publicly, we needed to be bulletproof. I contacted a lawyer anonymously, someone who knew fraud cases, and explained the documents I had, the accounts, the receipts. He told me what we could and couldn't say in a public room without risking a defamation suit. He coached me on phrasing, on how to use questions to draw admissions, and on how to secure the room so no one could claim evidence was staged. We also secured copies of bank transfers, screenshots of past emails, and printed invoices that traced funds to Hartwell Group accounts. Every piece of paper in my Hartwell files was copied and time-stamped. Redundancy was the only thing that soothed the panic at the back of my throat. Finally, we played the most dangerous part. I sent the message, a simple line, pretending to be eager and vulnerable. "I've been thinking. Maybe we rushed things. I'd like to talk. I have a pitch that might interest you. A new opportunity. Founders Night. Come, please." It felt obscene to manipulate someone the way she had manipulated me, but I told myself it was different. She'd made this an industry of betrayal. I would use the same tools she used to stop her. 2 days later, I got the reply. Short, composed, hungry. "I'll be there." My stomach flipped 6 times. She wanted a stage. We'd given her one. The week leading up to Founders Night was a study in restraint. I saw her again, in the city, at a cafe she used to haunt. And for a moment, I almost wanted to run over and blurt everything out. That's how raw the wound still was. Instead, I watched from a distance, planning. The night arrived like a hold-your-breath moment. The co-working space glowed warmer than it had any right to. People trickled in, clutching coffee and phones. Ethan sat with Rachel and two other women who had lost everything to Clara's schemes. Daniel Marsh came with a look that said, "I want to see justice done properly." The reporter introduced herself, friendly but alert. I took my seat near the back and felt the tremor under my skin. The camera hummed like a living thing. The AV guy gave me a small nod. Ready. The lawyer sent a text. All set. Don't say anything you don't need to say. Let her speak. Let her trap herself. The MC, our friend, started with the usual small talk about entrepreneurship, grit, and visions. People clapped. The room warmed. I could feel that electric, magnetic pull of a gathering where dreams might be made. It was the exact energy Clara had always craved. Then she walked in. She moved through the door like she owned it. Head held high, hair perfect, smile polished to a dangerous shine. The room seemed to bend toward her warmth. She scanned faces, found mine, and for a split second there was a flash of something like recognition. Not shock, not guilt, just calculation. She sat in the front row, cross-legged, singularly composed. My heart hammered, but my hands didn't shake. This was the moment I'd trained for. This was the moment that would either ruin me or remake me. She didn't know the faces in the room were victims. She didn't know that Daniel Marsh had a folder of receipts in his bag. She didn't know the reporter had already been briefed. She didn't know that the lights were set to pick up every nuance, every slip of the tongue. She believed she'd walk in, charm them, and leave with another offer. She believed in her invincibility. I watched her smooth her skirt and prepare to stand when the MC called for presenters. I had rehearsed what to do if she started to sound suspicious. We would let her talk. Then Daniel would stand and ask about a specific invoice. Rachel would follow, calm and steady, and lay out the truth she'd once shared with me. The reporter would keep her recorder going. I rehearsed the words I would say in my head a dozen times. Measured, factual, without venom. No shouting. No theatrics. Proof would do the work. My phone buzzed. A text from the lawyer. "You ready?" I typed back one word. "Yes." As the first presenter took the stage, I felt something else rise in me. A cold clarity. The pain that had consumed me for months now had a purpose. Every late night, every sleepless hour, every tear had led to this one moment. When the MC finished and called for the next presenter, Clara rose like a queen ascending a throne. She smiled at the crowd, her eyes finding mine for a heartbeat. And then she began to speak. Her voice slid smoothly into the room. She started with promises, sprinkled with just enough industry jargon to sound legitimate. She told her story. The same practiced arc I'd heard 100 times. People leaned forward. I sat very still. In my pocket, my phone recorded the scene. Behind me, Ethan tapped his pen. Across the aisle, Rachel sat with a tiny breath. Daniel's fingers tightened around a folder. And as Clara spoke, as the room warmed to her charm, a single thought settled over me like ice. This is it. Either she walks out of this room with her act intact, or everything she built comes crashing down. The next move was the one I'd been planning for weeks. I stood up. When I stood up, every sound in the room seemed to vanish. The buzz of the projector, the faint tapping of pens, the quiet rustle of jackets, all of it dissolved into silence. Only her voice remained, smooth, confident, sweet enough to rot your teeth. And with the right partners, she was saying, I believe we can redefine what ethical investing means in this city. Ethical investing. The words hit me like a cruel joke. I took a slow breath and stepped forward. Every eye turned. Clara's smile faltered for the first time. Sorry, I said. My tone steady, calm, almost polite. Would you mind if I asked a question? She blinked, then recovered. Of course, she said with that same honeyed charm. Always happy to answer. I nodded and walked closer. I could feel Ethan watching from behind me. Rachel gripping her seat. Daniel ready with the folder in his bag. The air was thick, like static before lightning. You mentioned partnerships, I said. Could you tell us more about your previous ones? Specifically your work with Hartwell Consulting? Her eyes flickered. It was subtle, but I saw it. That flash of panic before she smiled again. Hartwell? She said smoothly. Yes, I did some collaboration with them a while back. Great people, great company. Interesting, I interrupted, keeping my tone mild. Because Daniel Marsh from Hartwell is here tonight, and he's been trying to reach you for over a year about missing funds. A ripple went through the room. People shifted in their seats. Daniel stood slowly, holding a folder. Clara's smile froze. I'm sorry, she said, laughter trembling at the edge of her words. Daniel didn't speak right away. He opened the folder, revealing printed invoices and bank transfers. We wired $48,000 to an account you claimed was for a marketing firm, he said. That firm doesn't exist. We traced the account. It leads to you. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I took another step forward. You also took $10,000 from Rachel under the name Sable Strategies. That company was supposed to help her launch her eco brand, but it never existed either, did it? Rachel rose from her chair. You said you'd mentor me, she said, her voice shaking. You took my savings, Clara. Clara's hands trembled now, though she tried to hide it by gripping the podium. I don't know what this is, she stammered. This is ridiculous. You can't just... I raised my voice, clear and calm, slicing through her words. You can't just keep creating fake companies, fake partners, fake lives. It's over, Clara. A murmur rolled through the audience. The MC looked frozen, unsure whether to intervene. The reporter in the corner quietly raised her camera. Clara turned toward the crowd, panic finally slipping through her mask. He's lying, she said quickly. This is some personal vendetta. He's obsessed with me. I laughed softly, not cruelly, but like someone who had finally run out of fear. You're right about one thing, I said. It is personal, because you didn't just steal money. You stole trust. You took pieces of people and turned them into props for your show. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thin folder. My own Hartwell files. You've lied to over a dozen people, I continued. My voice low, steady, echoing in the silence. Used fake business names. Fake credentials. You even forged letters of recommendation from investors who don't exist. You built an entire world out of air. And you made us believe it. The projector flickered, and Ethan cued the slides we'd prepared. On the screen appeared a timeline. Emails, screenshots, side-by-side comparisons of her aliases, the same photo recycled under different company names. Each image landed like a hammer. The crowd gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Clara stumbled back, her perfect composure cracking. "No," she whispered. This isn't real." But the evidence was undeniable. The room had turned. Every person who'd once leaned toward her charm now leaned away from her shadow. Daniel dropped another document onto the table. "These are the transfers," he said flatly. "Your signature, your accounts. And if that's not enough, the reporter over there has verified everyone." Clara turned toward the reporter, eyes wide. You can't publish this! It's private. This is defamation." The reporter stood calm but sharp. "Not if it's true," she said quietly. It was like watching a tower collapse in slow motion. The woman who once strutted through boardrooms now shrinking into a corner of her own lies. Her hands were shaking. Her voice cracked into pieces. "You don't understand," she said desperately. "I did this for them. I was helping people." No, I said, stepping forward. "You did this for you. Every smile, every promise. It was just a transaction. You didn't build people up. You hollowed them out." She stared at me like she didn't recognize the person standing in front of her. Maybe she didn't. I wasn't the same fool she'd played months ago. The man who once waited for her texts, who doubted his own instincts. He was gone. The silence stretched. Then Ethan clicked the next slide. The final piece. An image appeared on the screen. Clara's real name. Not Clara Hartwell. Not Sophie Cross. Lena Gray, her real identity. Her previous alias, tied to an old fraud case in another city. Something the reporter had found buried in court archives. She froze. Her breath hitched audibly. You could almost see the moment her mask completely shattered. People started whispering. Someone pulled out their phone. Another person whispered, "She changed her name?" Lena's lips trembled. You don't know what you're talking about," she muttered. "That was years ago." I held her gaze. "You said you believed in second chances. But you never took yours, did you? You just changed your name and started the same game again." Her eyes filled with tears. Real or not, I couldn't tell anymore. "Please," she whispered. "Don't do this." I almost felt something. Pity, maybe. But then I remembered Rachel's tears. Daniel's losses. The nights I couldn't sleep, replaying every lie she told me. "No," I said softly. "You already did this. To yourself." She looked around the room for help, for sympathy, for someone still fooled. But there was no one left. Every face was stone. Even the MC, who'd started the night smiling, just stared in disbelief. And then, in a final desperate move, she ran for the exit. The reporter caught the door with her shoulder. "Not so fast," she said quietly. "We still need a statement." Lena stopped. She looked trapped, cornered, not by walls, but by the truth. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You could have told the truth a long time ago," I said. "You could have stopped pretending. But you couldn't, could you? Because the performance was all you ever had." She didn't answer. Her eyes were wet, her mascara streaked, her breathing uneven. For the first time, the silence didn't serve her. It crushed her. Ethan stepped forward and spoke to the room. "We've contacted the authorities. We're submitting everything. If anyone else has been affected, talk to us after." Lena, or Clara, or whatever name she wore now, turned to me one last time. "You think you've won?" she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "You think this makes you better than me?" I looked at her for a long moment, the anger in me cooling into something else. Clarity, maybe. "No," I said quietly. "It just makes me free." She glared at me like she wanted to say more, but there was nothing left to say. The lies were gone. The world she'd built was ashes. The reporter raised her camera again. One last photo as Lena Gray. The woman behind the masks stood in the ruins of her perfect world. I turned away. Behind me, I heard her voice crack once more, a soft, broken sound. Then the door opened, and she was gone. The room remained silent for a moment, like everyone was processing what they'd just witnessed. Then someone started clapping, not loudly, but with relief. Others followed. Rachel hugged me, tears in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt lighter, like a weight I'd been carrying had finally lifted. Ethan clapped me on the back. "Justice," he said simply. Maybe it was, but more than that, it was closure. The reporter came up to me afterward. "That was powerful," she said. "I'll write it carefully." "You deserve your side told," I nodded. "Just tell the truth," I said. "That's all I ever wanted." As people slowly began to leave, the buzz of conversation filled the air again. But I just stood there, staring at the door where she'd vanished. Her perfect world, the empire of lies she'd built, had finally collapsed, and for the first time I wasn't trapped beneath it. The night after the exposure felt strangely quiet. No noise from the city could drown out the silence inside me. I sat by my apartment window, watching the streetlights flicker against the rain-soaked glass, and tried to process everything that had just happened. For months, my life had revolved around her, around uncovering her lies, gathering evidence, and preparing that moment of truth. But now that it was done, there was nothing left to chase, no anger left to burn through, just quiet. And in that quiet, I realized how much of myself I'd lost while trying to expose her. It wasn't that I regretted it. Not at all. Justice needed to be done, and truth deserved a voice. But somewhere between heartbreak and revenge, I'd forgotten who I was before she came into my life. The man who used to dream, laugh freely, and believe in people without fear. I'd buried him under strategy and suspicion. That night, I found myself standing in front of a mirror. I barely recognized the reflection. Tired eyes, unshaven jaw, a faint scar of exhaustion across my face. But behind that fatigue was something new, or maybe something rediscovered. Strength. For the first time, I didn't feel broken. I felt awake. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts, emails, missed calls. The story was already spreading. The reporter had published a carefully written article. The rise and fall of Clara Hartwell, the woman who built her empire on lies. She'd changed names, but the truth didn't care. The article didn't glorify the scandal. It simply told the facts, her double life, the people she deceived, the moment she was exposed. My name was mentioned only once, briefly, under the phrase "a former partner who helped uncover the truth." It wasn't about me anymore, and honestly, I was relieved. By noon, the internet was buzzing. Her social media pages vanished one by one. The networking groups she'd ruled over removed her name. Investors withdrew their backing. Within hours, her empire, the one built on charm and illusion, had turned to dust. Ethan called around lunch. "You see the article?" he asked, voice rough from lack of sleep. "Yeah," I said. "She's finished, man. Completely done." I didn't respond right away. Finished. The word felt heavy. There was satisfaction in it, sure, but also a kind of sadness. Because once upon a time I'd loved her. The same person I'd just destroyed. Ethan must have sensed the silence. "Don't you dare start feeling sorry for her," he warned. "She chose this path." "I know," I said quietly. "But that doesn't make it easier." He sighed. "You did what had to be done. You didn't just get revenge. You stopped her from hurting anyone else." He was right. But it still left a hollow ache where my anger used to be. A few days later, Rachel texted me. "She reached out," the message read. "What did she say?" I typed back. "Nothing really. Just said she's leaving town. Said she hopes we can all move on. Move on. The irony wasn't lost on me. I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the words, wondering where Clara, or Lena, or whatever name she'd choose next, would go. Maybe she'd try to start over again somewhere else. Maybe she'd finally face herself. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't forgive her either. I just released her. That night, I took a long walk by the river, the same river where we used to sit during the early days when love felt pure and laughter came easy. The city lights danced on the water's surface, and I realized how much life had changed since then. There was a time when I believed love was everything, that it could fix anything, even broken people. But now I knew better. Love isn't supposed to fix. It's supposed to grow. And when it's built on lies, it rots from the inside no matter how beautiful it looks on the surface. She taught me that. Over the next few weeks, I started piecing my life back together. Slowly, gently. I reconnected with old friends I'd pushed away while drowning in that toxic relationship. I apologized where I needed to. I started running again, cooking, laughing. Things that once seemed meaningless but now felt like small acts of reclaiming myself. Ethan and I met often. Sometimes we talked about her case. Apparently some victims were pursuing legal action, and authorities were looking into her finances. But mostly, we talked about life, about how strange it was to watch someone so manipulative fall apart so completely. She built a kingdom out of lies, Ethan said one evening, sipping his beer. But even lies need believers. Once people stopped believing, she had nothing left. He was right. Her power had never been real. It was borrowed from the trust of others. And once trust was gone, so was she. Weeks turned into months. I found myself thinking about her less and less. At first, it surprised me. How silence could replace obsession. How peace could quietly slip in once you stopped feeding pain. I started writing again. Not about her, but about what I'd learned. About trust. About manipulation. About how easy it is to lose yourself trying to please someone who never truly sees you. One night, as I wrote, I realized something profound. I wasn't her victim anymore. I was her lesson, and maybe, just maybe, she was mine. A few months later, I heard through Rachel that Clara had resurfaced briefly in another city, trying to rebuild her life under her real name. But this time, she didn't get far. Too many people knew. Too many truths followed her. Apparently, she'd been confronted by another victim. Someone who'd read the article and recognized her. After that, she disappeared again. I didn't smile when I heard it. I just nodded. That was her journey now, running from the mirror she refused to face. Mine was different, because for the first time I wasn't running from anything. Not from pain, not from betrayal, not from memories. I faced them all, one by one, until they lost their power. One evening, Rachel invited a few of us to a small dinner. Ethan came, Daniel too. There was laughter, music, and peace, something I hadn't felt in what seemed like forever. As the night went on, Rachel raised her glass and said softly, "To healing, to new beginnings." Everyone clinked glasses. I looked around that table, at the faces of people who had once been victims, now survivors, and felt something powerful bloom inside me. Gratitude. Clara had broken us, yes, but she'd also connected us in a strange way. Through resilience, through truth. Together, we'd rebuilt what she had tried to destroy. Trust. And in that moment, I understood something that would stay with me forever. Revenge might give you closure, but truth gives you peace. That night, as I walked home under the stars, I stopped by that same bridge over the river. The water shimmered softly beneath the moonlight, calm and endless. I leaned on the railing and whispered to myself, "You made it." And for the first time, I believed it. I didn't need her to see my worth anymore. I didn't need anyone's validation. I had walked through betrayal and come out stronger, not colder, not bitter, but wiser. I had learned that forgiveness isn't always about the other person. Sometimes, It's about freeing yourself from the story that hurt you. So I forgave her, not for what she did, but for what I allowed myself to become because of her. And with that, the last chain fell away. The next morning, sunlight streamed through my window like a quiet blessing. The city moved on, and so did I. I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and began drafting something new. A speech for a small entrepreneurship seminar. They'd invited me to talk about trust and authenticity in business. Funny, isn't it? The man who was once deceived now teaching others how not to be. I smiled as I typed the title, The Cost of a Lie and the Strength of Truth. Every word I wrote felt like closure, because in the end, she hadn't destroyed me. She'd only forced me to rebuild. Stronger, clearer, unbreakable. And that, I realized, was the real revenge. Living well, walking freely, and never letting someone else's deceit define your story again. When I finished writing, I looked out the window one last time. The world outside felt different now. Brighter somehow, even in its imperfection. She had played me for a fool. But in the end, I was the one who walked away free. They say time heals everything, but I've learned that time alone doesn't heal. Truth does. Time just gives you the silence to finally hear what your heart's been trying to tell you all along. When I look back now, it almost feels like another lifetime. A chapter that began with love, drifted into lies, and ended with something unexpected. Not bitterness, not anger, but clarity. I used to think betrayal was the worst thing a person could go through. But it's not. The worst thing is what betrayal can turn you into. Cynical, guarded, afraid to feel again. That's what I had to fight hardest against. Because pain has a way of whispering lies into your soul. It tells you not to trust. It tells you that caring is weakness. It convinces you that shutting down will protect you from ever being hurt again. And for a while, I believed it. I built walls so high that even I couldn't see over them. I told myself I was stronger now, when really I was just hiding behind the armor of my own fear. But healing, real healing, isn't about becoming harder. It's about becoming wiser, softer, and still being brave enough to open your heart again, even after it's been shattered. I remember sitting one evening by that same river, the place where everything began. The sky was painted in shades of gold and violet, and for a moment, I just watched the water flow. It reminded me that life moves on. No matter how many storms crash against it, the current keeps pushing forward. And that's what we all have to do. Move forward. Not to forget the pain, but to understand it. Because every wound carries a lesson. Every heartbreak shapes a stronger version of us. I learned that love without honesty is an illusion. That charm can hide darkness. That manipulation often wears the face of warmth. But I also learned something more powerful. That no one can truly break you unless you hand them the pieces yourself. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever trusted the wrong person, I want you to hear this. You are not foolish for loving. You are not weak for caring. And you are not broken because someone couldn't value your heart. Their deceit doesn't define your worth. Their lies don't rewrite your story. What defines you is what you do after. Do you let the pain consume you? Or do you rise from it? I chose to rise, and that made all the difference. It's strange. I used to ask myself why. Why did she do it? Why me? Why lie when love was freely given? But now, I no longer need those answers. Sometimes people hurt others, not because they enjoy it, but because they're lost within themselves. And while that explains their actions, it doesn't excuse them. Forgiveness, I've realized, isn't about saying it's okay. It's about saying, I won't carry your darkness anymore. So, I let go. Not for her, but for me. Because the moment you forgive, you reclaim your power. You stop being the victim of your story and start being its author again. The truth is, life will always bring people who test your kindness. Some will take your hand and walk beside you. Others will take your hand just to see how tightly you'll hold on before they let go. You can't always tell the difference at first, but your intuition knows, those quiet gut feelings. the ones you dismiss as paranoia. They're often your soul trying to protect you. I ignored those whispers once. Next time, I won't. Because love should never make you question your worth. It should never make you doubt your reality, and it should never make you feel small. If I could go back and talk to the person I was before all this, that hopeful, trusting version of me, I'd tell him something simple. Don't lose your light just because someone else couldn't handle its brightness. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't need more people who are cold and guarded. It needs people who have been through hell and still choose to love anyway. People who can look at their scars and see not shame, but proof that they survived. And that's what I choose to be. Maybe that's the ultimate revenge. Not the moment you expose their lies, but the moment you smile again and mean it. The moment you find peace in your heart and realize they can't touch it anymore. That's when you truly win. So, if you're listening to this and you've been hurt, don't let it turn you bitter. Don't let it make you build walls so thick that no one else can get in. Instead, let it teach you discernment. Let it make you wiser, sharper, and still open to love. But love that's real, that's honest. That doesn't require you to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's lie. People often ask me now, would you ever love again? And my answer is simple, yes, but differently. Not with blind trust, but with open eyes. Not with fear of losing, but with gratitude for feeling. Because love, even after betrayal, is still the most beautiful thing we can experience. It's not love that hurts us. It's the wrong people wearing love's mask. But when you find the right person, someone who values truth as much as affection, every scar becomes worth it. There's one last thing I want to leave you with. If pain ever knocks on your door, and it will, welcome it for a moment, but don't let it unpack its bags. Learn from it, grow through it, and then let it go. Because the longer you hold on to it, the more it becomes who you are. Never let pain turn you cold. Never let betrayal convince you that everyone is the same. Never let heartbreak make you forget how to love. Because somewhere out there, someone will meet the healed version of you. The one who has walked through fire and learned to glow from within. And when that happens, you'll realize why the storm had to come first. So, yes, she played me for a fool, but in the end, she taught me the greatest truth of all. That you can lose everything, your love, your trust, even your heart, and still come out stronger than ever before. Pain changed me, yes, but it didn't destroy me. It shaped me, refined me, prepared me for something real. And as I walk forward, I carry not bitterness, but peace, not anger, but wisdom, not fear, but hope. Because no matter how dark it gets, love, the honest kind, is always worth trying for again. She taught me what betrayal feels like, but I taught myself what healing looks like. And that's how I won, not by breaking her, but by refusing to let her break me. Never let pain turn you cold. Let it turn you wise. Let it turn you free.